The United States and Canada have long enjoyed a close relationship, built on trade, shared values, and intertwined economies. However, the re-election of Donald Trump in 2024 ushered in a period of unprecedented strain. In a move that shocked many Canadians, President Trump slapped tariffs on a range of Canadian goods, including steel and aluminum. The Canadian government, led at the time by Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, was blindsided by the move. They argued that the tariffs were unjustified and harmful to both economies. Adding fuel to the fire were President Trump's provocative comments about Canada. He repeatedly questioned the value of the U.S.-Canada relationship and even suggested annexing Canada as the 51st state. These remarks, widely seen as outlandish and disrespectful, further inflamed tensions and left Canadians feeling deeply offended. The stage was set for a major diplomatic and economic clash. Canadian public's response to the Trump administration's actions was swift and decisive, a nationwide boycott of American products. From coast to coast, Canadians rallied behind the call to buy Canadian. Supermarkets saw a surge in demand for Canadian-made groceries, while American brands like Coca-Cola and Kellogg's faced a sudden drop in sales. Canadians canceled their subscriptions to U.S.-based streaming services like Netflix and Spotify, opting instead for Canadian alternatives. Travel agencies reported a sharp decline in bookings for trips to the United States as Canadians chose to vacation elsewhere. The message was clear. Canadians were prepared to hit America where it hurt, in the pocketbook, to show their displeasure with President Trump's policies. Social media played a key role in galvanizing support for the boycott, with hashtags like #BoycottUSA and #BuyCanadian trending across the country. Newspapers and television channels were filled with stories of Canadians finding creative ways to avoid American products, from brewing their own beer to sewing their own clothes. It was a way for Canadians to push back against what they saw as bullying tactics from a powerful neighbor. The Canadian boycott, while a powerful symbol of national solidarity, was not without its economic consequences. The U.S. Travel Association estimated that a 10% drop in Canadian tourism could result in a $2.1 billion loss for the American economy and the loss of 14,000 jobs. The impact was felt most acutely in border states like Michigan, which relies heavily on Canadian tourists. Michigan's tourism industry, a vital part of the state's economy, found itself on the front lines of the trade war. Canadians, who make up 46% of Michigan's international visitors, typically spend an average of $500 per trip, supporting thousands of jobs in hotels, restaurants, and tourist attractions. Popular destinations like Mackinac Island, Port Huron, Sault Ste. Marie, and the casinos of Detroit all reported a significant decline in Canadian visitors. The pain was not limited to the tourism sector. The Canadian Steel Producers Association warned of potential job losses in the steel industry as a result of the U.S. tariffs. The boycott, while intended to pressure the United States, inevitably led to economic pain on both sides of the border. The Canadian government, facing pressure to respond to the U.S. tariffs and support its citizens, adopted a two-pronged approach. First, it retaliated with tariffs of its own on a range of American goods, carefully chosen to target industries and constituencies located in key Republican strongholds. This targeted approach aimed to inflict maximum political pain on the Trump administration and its supporters. Second, the government launched a campaign to promote domestic tourism and encourage Canadians to explore their own backyard. Prime Minister Trudeau, before his resignation, was a vocal supporter of this initiative, urging Canadians to buy Canadian and experience the beauty and diversity of their own country. The government increased funding for tourism marketing and partnered with Canadian airlines and travel agencies to offer discounts and incentives to domestic travelers. This strategy aimed to mitigate the economic impact of the boycott on the Canadian tourism industry while fostering a sense of national pride and self-reliance. The government also sought to diversify its trading partners, looking to strengthen ties with countries like China, Japan, and those in the European Union. Section 5. A Nation United, Patriotism and Pushback. The Canadian boycott of American products was more than just an economic protest, it was a cultural phenomenon. Across the country, Canadians embraced the boycott with a mix of defiance, patriotism, and a touch of humor. The dispute with the United States seemed to awaken a latent sense of national identity, prompting Canadians to reflect on what it meant to be Canadian and how their values differed from those of their southern neighbor. Polls conducted during this period showed a surge in national pride and a growing desire among Canadians to reduce their reliance on the United States. Canadians expressed feelings of betrayal and disillusionment with the Trump administration, which they perceived as arrogant, unpredictable, and disrespectful of Canada's sovereignty. The shared experience of facing down a common adversary seemed to strengthen the bonds within Canadian society. Canadians shared tips on social media about how to identify and avoid American products, organized group trips to Canadian destinations, and proudly displayed their Buy Canadian stickers and buttons. The boycott, while rooted in a trade dispute, transcended economics to become a cultural touchstone, a moment when Canadians rallied together to defend their values and their place in the world. Section 6. Michigan feels the pinch, a case study in cross-border dependence. The Canadian boycott of American products provided a stark illustration of the interconnectedness of the U.S. and Canadian economies, particularly in border regions like Michigan. The state, heavily reliant on Canadian tourism and trade, became an unwitting casualty in the trade war. As Canadian tourists stayed away, businesses across Michigan felt the pinch. Hotels reported a wave of cancellations, restaurants saw a drop in customers, and tourist attractions experienced a sharp decline in attendance. The impact was particularly acute in communities that relied heavily on Canadian visitors, such as those along the border and those catering to outdoor enthusiasts. The situation in Michigan underscored the economic risks associated with strained relations between the two countries. Michigan's tourism industry, caught in the crossfire, began to lobby the U.S. government to reconsider its trade policies and work towards repairing relations with Canada. Michigan became a microcosm of the broader economic and political forces at play in the U.S.-Canada trade dispute. Section 7. Trudeau's exit, Canada's choice, the political landscape. The escalating trade tensions with the United States and the resulting economic uncertainty cast a long shadow over Canadian politics. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, already facing criticism for his handling of the economy and the ongoing housing crisis, faced mounting pressure to navigate the crisis effectively and stand up for Canadian interests. However, in a surprising turn of events, Trudeau announced his resignation in January 2025, citing the immense pressure of the role and the toll it had taken on his family. His departure threw Canadian politics into disarray, leaving the Liberal Party scrambling to choose a new leader and prepare for a federal election scheduled for later that year. The Conservative Party, led by Pierre Poilievre, seized on the opportunity to paint the Liberals as weak and ineffective in the face of American aggression. The new Democratic Party, under the leadership of Jagmeet Singh, sought to position itself as a principled alternative, advocating for a more multilateral approach to trade and a renewed focus on social justice. Section 8. Can this relationship be saved? Uncertainty on the horizon. The Canadian boycott of American products, sparked by President Trump's tariffs, sent shockwaves through the U.S.-Canada relationship. The dispute exposed the vulnerabilities of the deeply integrated economies and revealed the depth of resentment that had been simmering beneath the surface. As the boycott continued, questions lingered about the long-term impact on the relationship between the two countries. The White House, facing pressure from businesses and lawmakers concerned about the economic fallout, announced a temporary 30-day pause on the tariffs to allow for renegotiations with Canada. However, the damage had already been done. The boycott had taken on a life of its own, becoming a symbol of Canadian resistance to what was perceived as American bullying. The future of the U.S.-Canada relationship remained uncertain. Much depended on the outcome of the upcoming Canadian federal election and the willingness of both sides to engage in good faith negotiations. Section 9. Beyond the bottom line. A reckoning for two nations. The Canadian boycott of American products, triggered by a seemingly straightforward trade dispute, evolved into something far more profound. It became a catalyst for Canadians to re-examine their relationship with the United States, their own national identity, and their place in the world. The boycott exposed the complexities and contradictions inherent in the relationship between these two neighbors. It highlighted the asymmetry of power, with the United States often perceived as acting unilaterally and with little regard for Canadian interests. The boycott forced Canadians to confront uncomfortable truths about their reliance on the U.S. economy and their vulnerability to American political whims. Yet, it also revealed the resilience of the Canadian spirit, the strength of its democratic institutions, and its capacity for collective action. The dispute, while disruptive and costly, offered an opportunity for both countries to learn from their mistakes and to emerge from the experience with a renewed appreciation for the importance of the relationship. The legacy of the boycott, therefore, extended far beyond the realm of economics, prompting a fundamental reassessment of the values and principles that would define the future of the US-Canada relationship.